Hey folks, welcome to another edition of the Patreon Q&A here on The Golden Bolt. The name is what it says on the tin. If you're not familiar, over at patreon.com/thegoldenbolt or by joining via the YouTube channel memberships feature either on the main channel or even here on the second channel if that feature is enabled. I don't remember if it is, I think it is. You get access to the exclusive Golden Bolt Discord server where you can hang out, talk to some really cool people as well as me. I'm not cool. And you get access to the Patreon Q&A feed where every month you can ask me whatever question you want and I answer it here in video form. It's a lot of fun. I always enjoy seeing what you guys ask, and I'm going to shout out some other Patreon/YouTube membership stuff, although keep in mind the member prices might be a little different because YouTube's a little weird, just because I have other stuff in store that I'm changing for the Patreon, as well as some updates, and now is a good time to get in if you're not already a patron. So for $5 a month or more, you can enter the Silverbolt tier on Patreon, where you get early and ad-free access to videos, as well as access to the Patreon update feed, where I'll give some updates on what kind of content is in store. I'll put out some polls occasionally and say, hey, which of these ideas do you like? Do you want to see me pursue? That sort of thing. And for $15 a month or more, you enter the exclusive Golden tier. It's the Golden Bolt tier of the Golden Bolt Patreon, where you get your name shouted out at the end of every video in a verbal shoutout, or now it's the end of every other video just because there's a lot of you, so I shout it out at the end card, and alternate so that everybody gets in every month in case you want the verbal shoutout, as well as some other bonuses like the Patreon suggestion tab, so you can suggest video topics or games for me to cover, or even stream in some capacity, or just talk about in a video here in case I don't have any proper content ready. I'll usually try and play something if I have a chance to play it, and I'll talk about it here, that sort of thing. There's also some other fun perks, such as one that's starting up in the next couple days. I finally have sorted out the Patreon merch discount, so if you're in the Golden tier, you get a coupon code that lets you buy any sort of Golden Bolt merch over at my merch shop, which is just shop.thegoldenbolt.net, and you get all of it at cost, so I'm not making any other money off of patrons in the Golden tier. You guys just get a discount to buy it at the cost that it takes for us to manufacture it and send it out. So, hey, that's pretty cool. I'm also planning for at least the silver and up tier, maybe also all three tiers of the Patreon/members, Discord hangout nights, probably once a month. I'm not sure yet. I've been looking into that because you guys all said that you wanted to get into a voice call and just chat every now and then, maybe do a game night here and there. And so I'm going to do that starting probably around January, and I'll figure out details. You'll get them over on the Patreon or the Discord, and we'll just hang out. Probably going to do it for all three tiers to start, and then if it's like 100 people in there, then I might have to eventually whittle it back behind a higher paywall, as much as that sucks, just because that way people can all talk, you know? So that's coming pretty soon. In case you ever wanted to just chat, you can do that very soon with the Patreon. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, that's enough of the Patreon plugs. I think I have everything update-wise that I wanted to mention, and yeah, let's get into the questions. Yeah. First off, I have a double with two questions, as always, and they're always really good questions. So he had asked, other than the PlayStation mainstays you talked about on your channel, what other series are up there for you on the PlayStation? And then the follow-up question is, what PlayStation mainstays do you wish you weren't that into? I'm not sure if you meant, do I wish I was into, or that I wish that I didn't like them as much as I do. As far as other series that I do enjoy on PlayStation, generally, I'm pretty cool with most of them. You know, I don't have issues with really any of them. Like, Days Gone, no thank you. But otherwise, you know, I really love the Infamous series, the first two games at least, and also Fetch's game. Fetch's game was pretty good. I'm not a huge Jak guy. I haven't talked about Jak yet, but I got into Jak much later in life. What else as far as PlayStation exclusives? I'm looking at my games behind me. I don't really have any specific ones that I'm like, yeah, that's my other one that I'm really in love with. Usually I just, like with Nintendo or Microsoft, if a new thing comes out that they make, I try it, and hopefully it's pretty good. So, not the best answer, but I will shout out like Gravity Rush. Gravity Rush is really, really good, and everyone should play it, even though it's now free and a dead series. I really enjoyed those two games. And then I'm going to answer the second question as if you had asked what PlayStation mainstays do I wish I was that into, because I think that makes more sense as the question, and hopefully that is what you meant, but if not, oops. What PlayStation series do I wish I was into? I didn't care for early God of War. I just never got into it. I never liked Kratos' character, even in God of War 1, where he kind of had one. It felt very of its era, even in its era, and I was like, that's not really for me. It's sort of like Gears of War. Like, yeah, Gears of War is very of its era, and yeah, not to compare those two directly otherwise, just products of their era. And at some point, I know that I'll probably go back. If I go back, it'll be for content probably, to try and go through the whole series. We'll see if I do that, but I know people have asked, so I probably will at some point. And yeah, what other PlayStation? Ape Escape. I'm getting into Ape Escape. I'm thinking about doing a video on Ape Escape. So I never really played them much as a kid. I didn't have them as a kid. And going back, I've enjoyed them. I wish I was more into them than I am, because they're kind of just good games, and I think that a lot of people who are huge Ape Escape fans maybe overstate how cool of a series it is. I think it's a rad series, but I think that because it's been so gone for so long, I think people are starting to overhype it a little bit, and I don't think that a new Ape Escape would live up to that hype that people are setting up for it, given that's like probably 10 people online. No one really cares about Ape Escape, but still. I then have a question from Tony Grizz, who asks, have you ever played the game The Forest or its sequel? The original tells a very interesting story through collectibles with an insane conclusion to the game itself. Easily one of my favorite survival games, and if you have played it, do you have any interest in doing a video on it? I have not played The Forest. This is now the second time someone's mentioned it. It might have also been you if you were at the Crub, my podcast. If you were at the Crubcast when that came up at some point relatively recently, someone mentioned The Forest. It might have been Frankenmutt and not you, actually. But if it was you, sorry, I just remember that it came up twice now, so I should look into it and give it a shot. But no, I haven't played it, and generally, I know it's a newer game, like, last decade. It's tough with newer games to cover them in any significant capacity, because there's not really much interest in them a lot of the time. They kind of just live and die, and then, 10 years later, people come back to them. So a lot of newer stuff I don't cover unless it's like a review where, they send me a code early or whatever, so I can review it in time with everybody else and cover it more properly. Otherwise, it's always a risk view-wise, and I hate having to worry about the views, but yeah. And generally, I don't worry about views is the thing. Like, I can cover most things and expect that it'll get a certain number of viewership that keeps me at like okay, I can make this and I'll be okay in terms of the channel's health and that sort of thing. But every now and then I do have to keep it in mind. Like the last few videos prior to the THQ video were not necessarily underperforming, but it all hit at the same time as some legacy videos started dying down, and they all did like okay. So I was like, oh, I need a banger to put out just to keep the growth coming and that sort of thing. Otherwise, if you're not growing on YouTube, it's not a good thing in terms of, it's like endless capitalism. You need to have infinite growth or else the platform hates you. Not really, but kind of. I do want to talk about my YouTube process at some point in a proper video here on the second channel for stuff like how not necessarily how I pick topics, but how things like sponsorships are negotiated and that sort of thing, and how the YouTube revenue stream tends to look for at least me as a creator. Not necessarily the numbers themselves, because people get weird about that, but just for the sake of like transparency, because no one really shares what the YouTube process is like for them, where it's like, oh, this is why X person took this sponsor, or this is how much sponsorships make compared to ad revenue and stuff like Patreon. And generally, unless you're a really big channel or have a really outsized Patreon support system, the sponsorships are going to pay a lot more than ad revenue and Patreon combined ever could. Even for me, like, my videos are watched for a long amount of time. And this is not even close to your question, Tony, so hopefully I answered the first part of your question relatively well. But keeping into this stuff, because I always like talking about it and sharing this stuff, my videos are watched for a long enough amount of time per video that like the ad rate that those videos get is higher than most channels of my size or even larger sizes, which is pretty cool. It's nice that because of that I can reliably expect YouTube to push most videos, and like I know what the floor is going to be, so it's a lot less volatile, and I can kind of, sort of like you asked with The Forest, I can kind of fuck around and make whatever, and generally it'll do okay. But even then, sponsorships pay like far more. Like, they're the main income of most creators if they're taking them, which is why people take them. And viewership matters in terms of sponsor negotiations, not for that specific video that they're sponsoring, but in general. Like there was a mobile game that I was in talks with, which was the first one I was actually considering, or the second one actually, because those guys pay a lot. Like, they pay like, hey, here's your rent for the year type thing, and who says no to that? And I was talking to them, and they were trying to lowball, as these, knockoff Chinese mobile games tend to do. They were trying to lowball because, your viewership is volatile on these last few videos. And I was like, yeah, but if I'm going to give you a video, you're getting one that's going to be worth the money, that sort of thing. That's usually why I try and keep on like big tentpole topics lately, as much as I'm hoping that in the next few months I will get much more liberal with my uploading, because I'd like to be a little more consistent next year. Not that I wasn't consistent this year, but I'd like to be able to cover stuff like, for example, The Forest, not specifically that game because I haven't played it yet, but stuff that like I can just kind of talk about and share. So smaller stuff like the THQ video, I'd like to do a lot more and be able to give myself the room to experiment with that sort of game. So hopefully I'll play it soon. I think it's on my wish list on Steam. Anyway, I didn't really answer your question much at all outside of that first bit, so thank you for getting me onto the tangent. But one day I'll play The Forest, and hopefully I'll enjoy it. It's sort of like The Outer Wilds is another game that it's probably not similar to The Forest, but I think of those together because they're games that I've had recommended to me a few times that I'm just like waiting for the right moment, because those both feel like games I wouldn't play for content. And that's one of those things is like, usually as a creator I have, I'm doing another tangent here. Usually as a creator I have, a certain game or two that I'm like, I'm playing this for me right now. This is my relaxed game if I'm playing games at all outside of work. So usually I pick one and I go through it. Like Yakuza has always been that way. The Like a Dragon series has always been that way for me, where like, maybe one day I'd like to cover it in a proper capacity, but I just like that it's something that is just for me. That's kind of cool to have something that I don't think about, I should be recording this. And that's where The Forest is in my brain with The Outer Wilds, because for some reason those two, I don't know why I think of them in the same breath, but I do. Gonna move along to Nathaniel Foga, who asked, what would you say was your favorite gaming experience of this year? I have a few, and I don't know which one would be the number one. I mentioned recently that I really enjoyed Cassette Beasts. That game kind of has just stuck with me I beat it last week sometime, and ever since then it's been like every day it's popped into my head, and I'm like, man, that was a really good game. So I'll shout that one out again, but it's probably something in Zelda. I know what it is in Zelda, actually. It's the spoilery part. Is it still a spoiler? The underground stuff. The way that area was set up, it was able to capture the feeling of playing Breath of the Wild for the first time, in the sense of, I don't know what's coming, and I'm underprepared for this. Whereas the rest of Tears of the Kingdom, outside of the crafting, you're like, I know I'm good. I'm good with the mechanics. I'm good. I played the first game. There's not a ton that's truly new in Tears of the Kingdom. Obviously, all the vehicle stuff is, and there's a lot of story stuff where they just kind of stopped acknowledging the first game, and that always bothered me. But hey, other than that, though, a lot of the stuff in Tears of the Kingdom, you're like, that's a natural progression of what we got in the first game. The underground is sort of that essence of, you are isolated on your own, figure out how to explore, figure out how to get there, and it just recontextualized the whole upper map for me, and it recontextualized exploring, which is something that I didn't think the game was going to be able to do because it was the same world, and then it did it, and I was wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. So I'm probably going to say that, though there's a lot of games from this year that I just have not played, like Baldur's Gate I haven't touched yet, Armored Core I haven't touched yet, what else? I just started Resident Evil 4, I haven't started Alan Wake. There's a lot that I'd have to get through, but I'll shout out Cassette Beasts, and then I'll say Zelda's Underground for sure. And last but not least, we have a question here from The Crazy Even, who asks, with the recent string of layoffs in games and the overall tech industry, the ever-growing speculation is that gaming is headed towards another crash, much like the great 1983 one has also been amplified. The speculation has been amplified, sorry. Rather than asking if you think there's another crash on the way, because Even says he doesn't personally think there is, I'll instead ask, what do you think the circumstances would need to be for another crash on that level to occur in the modern age of video gaming? So I actually was talking about this recently with Moriarty, again, of the Crubcast fame, my podcast. Go check it out. I think that there is a non-zero chance of a crash happening that is on that level in the near future because of Game Pass. The reason I say that is because there were some comments from Phil Spencer during the FTC stuff, which a lot of that is FTC posturing, of course, but a lot of it is, you don't say that without kind of maybe meaning it, and it feels like a thinly veiled threat, which was, if our Game Pass numbers don't get to, there's a graph that came attached to it. It was a graph of current Game Pass subscribers and what they expect growth to look like. And currently there's 40 million Game Pass subscribers, somewhere thereabouts. Or maybe it's 30 million, I forget. Somewhere around what the total Xbox Series sales is. That's what the Game Pass subscriber number also is. And they want, by 2027 to 2030, 110 million Game Pass subscribers. 110 million monthly subscriptions to their gaming service. And they said in that briefing, or in that they had comments attached to that made to the FTC, that if we don't see growth at least to that level, we will leave the gaming industry. Or they said we will likely, or we may. Something very they're not guaranteeing it, but. And I looked at that, and I looked at how Starfield has performed, which is, well, it's okay. It did well for the people that already wanted it, and then for everyone else, they played it for a week and stopped. It doesn't really seem to have the lasting Skyrim appeal that Skyrim did. People have kind of realized that Bethesda games are just like Ubisoft now, in the sense that they are what they are. They're not Game of the Year, peak gaming material anymore. They're popcorn. And that's totally fine. And I enjoyed Starfield for the 40 plus hours I think I put into it, outside of the fact that the story stopped caring about itself partway through, but that's besides the point. Anyway, Starfield was their big, this needs to be a hit game. And from what we have been able to see so far, it didn't seem to convert much by way of Game Pass subscribers. It didn't convert new people. And to think that Microsoft has threatened, that Phil Spencer has threatened at least once, technically twice, because there was another threat related to the Activision purchase, that they would pull out of the gaming industry entirely, and not just hardware. They were saying, we will leave the gaming space. If they did that, that would cause a crash, because that's now Activision, Bethesda, Obsidian, Double Fine, every studio they've bought up in the last 5 years, that most of them haven't even made a game yet somehow. Microsoft, when they cut a division, they don't tend to just sell it off and say, oh, it's fine, it's not ours anymore. They kill it. And so imagine the idea of Call of Duty going the way of, Embracer Group buying them out, or EA buying the rights to the series IP, or something like that. There's not enough money in the industry for that to be an easy recovery. And I don't think that you'd see Microsoft in that case spinning Activision off back into its own company. I think it would be catastrophic. And that's always been my concern with Game Pass, is they were pretty clear that they wanted to be the gaming subscription service, and that they were very aggressive in paying indie developers, the full cost of production just to put your game on Game Pass, not even necessarily exclusively. And they've continued doing that, but we've seen comments about the licensing fees being paid to some indie publishers. That has supposedly gone down, according to those publishers, both on Game Pass and the pre-price increase PS Plus collection stuff. Though the royalties have gone down, and that's always been my big concern, is when you devalue the price of a video game to the price of a subscription, you are, as Microsoft's case here, inherently saying your games are only worth $10 a month, or $15 a month now, whatever the price is, which means that you are not going to release a $70 game most of the time. You're going to release a game that's $15 and updated forever. And that's fine. That's a fine enough strategy if you want all your games to release in early access sort of states. But that was my one concern. And then the other concern was that if we devalue the price of a game, what happens if they pull out, or if they change that social contract they've made with gamers? Because then you're going to see people complaining about games going back to being $70. And how does that affect game sales industry-wide? I don't think it would too much. I think it would mostly hurt the Xbox players because they're the ones that aren't paying for games. I say they, but I also have Game Pass. I have like 3 years of Game Pass lined up, so I'm also not paying for their games. So hey, just as bad. But yeah, I don't know if I've said before, and I think I've said in one of the Q&As before, that my theory for years had been, and this was with EA as the company they were going to buy instead of Activision, that they were going to force the hand of Sony and Nintendo, or mainly partner up with Nintendo and then force their way into the Sony ecosystem, because that seems to be the way that this has always been going, that they would force Xbox as a back-end integration, sort of like Ubisoft Plus or EA Play, rather than being a dedicated Xbox service. And that seems to be a thing that just came out a couple days ago. The CFO of Xbox, talked about that sort of exact scenario where, we want to have Game Pass and we want to have Xbox on the PlayStation. And if Xbox were to go third party, that'd be very healthy for the industry at large, in the sense of, I mean, it'd be bad because we wouldn't have another console, but it'd be healthier is what I'm saying, versus if they were to just pull out, if they were to just go full Sega and say, we're done, we're out, see ya. The loss of, it's like, 30,000 jobs at Microsoft, something like that, that would be gone in terms of Activision, Bethesda, King, even all the companies that they've purchased for the Xbox division, all of that's now gone, and you're not going to see Sony or Nintendo go on hiring sprees. Embracer's already in bad shape right now, so they're not going to buy anybody else up. It'd probably go to like a Tencent or Epic or something like that, and I'd rather have Microsoft than Epic, mainly because I like the Xbox ecosystem. I just wish that their strategy worked, because I really want good Xbox games, and it's sad to me that the best Xbox game of the last decade is Hi-Fi Rush. It's that and Forza and Ori 2. If you look at the OpenCritic and Metacritic scores of Xbox games, Hi-Fi Rush is essentially, it's Forza, it's Ori 2, and it's technically Psychonauts 2, but I don't consider that a Microsoft published game because it was not going to be, and it happened to be coming out near the buyout. And it's fascinating that that's the case, that so many of their games have been duds, and I'm so sad by that. Even if quietly Halo's apparently coming back and not trash anymore, I hope that's the case. But anyway, that's just talking about me being sad about the Xbox brand, because I want it to be better. Yeah, I think if there was a crash, it'd be because of Game Pass, because of Microsoft in some capacity, because if they were to leave, they would leave full stop, and it would be catastrophic. And yeah, so that's every question I have for this month on the Patreon Q&A. There'll be a thread attached to this video on the patron feed, and you can always go into the Discord server if you're a patron and ask me any sort of question you want in the Patreon Q&A room on Discord. So make sure to do that. I will see you folks very soon for the next couple videos. I have a shorter one that I'm hoping to have out probably next week at this point, because I don't think I have time this week. I have birthday things I have to do. And then it's just about time for Size Matters finally. I've been hoping to have that out a lot sooner, and I've just been waiting for the interviews and stuff and putting it off, and I just haven't gotten many interviews back. So Ratchet PSP coming soon, coming this month, pretty much definitely, unless I get an interview and I have to stall further, but hopefully not. So enjoy those. Enjoy the videos that I've put out. Check out the podcast Crub. If you're not subscribed already, subscribe to that. I would really appreciate that. We're trying to get to 1,000 subs there by the end of the year, and that'd be really cool. So yeah, as always, until next time, stay golden. I was going to say something else, but I didn't think of anything cool to say, so we're just going to get the regular outro. Bye.